everyone, I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com, and today I'm here with Sherrilyn Kenyon. Hi Sherrilyn.
Hey sweetie, how are you doing today?
I am good, and for people watching on the video, that is an amazing hat.
Thank you. My friend Elizabeth does them. She's a blonde swan. Shameless publicity plug, but yeah, she's great.
That is fantastic. So just in case people don't know you, I can't believe they might not, but just in case, Sherrilyn is multi-award winning, multi-number 1 New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of urban fantasy and paranormal romance with over 80 million books sold in print in over 100 countries. She's also got YA, children's books, manga, graphic novels, colouring books, historical romance, and her books have been adapted by Marvel. So Sherrilyn, that's an amazing introduction. Do you feel like you've hit the top? Do you ever feel like you've made it?
No, not at all. I have 3 sons, and I was raised in the middle of boys, so they keep you humble real fast.
Well, I love that, because so often, I know my audience are like, wow, you're so up there in terms of what people think, and yet I know that self-doubt is still an issue for every author with every book, right? But I wanted to start by, because I'm in the UK and I saw that you trace your ancestry back to here, and you have a non-fiction book, The Writer's Guide to Everyday Life in the Middle Ages. So tell us a bit more about your links with Europe.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm actually, I'm of the Plantagenet bloodline, so, which is very,
Wow.
very cool. I know, right? And it's one of those things, my dad would tell us these stories, and you're like, sure, Dad, sure. And you'd kind of pat him on the head and kind of eye roll. But no, it turns out that actually he wasn't kidding. And it goes back on both my mother and my father's side. So, oh gosh, my brain work. It's early morning over here. So for people who don't know, I'm really not a morning person. But we came over with Jamestown. We were here originally too, so I've got Native American ancestry. But yeah, the ones who came over from England were among the first. They came over with on the Susan Constant, and also on the Mayflower. So I've got them back on both sides. William Farrar is the one that goes all the way back to the Plantagenet bloodline. So
Wow, so interesting. And how does your interest in the kind of Middle Ages come through in your writing?
Well, it was weird because I had started writing all of that before, like I said, I ever knew and what's so fun now is knowing that I'm related to most of the people that I wrote about, like William Marshall and Eleanor of Aquitaine and all that. So but my interest started when I was very, very young. My mother loved horror stories, and she loved a lot of the historical fiction. So, and Dragonwyck was kind of like the big bridge book between them. And as a little kid, it just fascinated me, the whole idea of castles and that Gothic setting, and everything about England just seemed so mysterious and beautiful, and Wales was so beautiful. And, and growing up in the South, we have that ancient Greek kind of architecture, but to me, it was just something about just England and the folklore and the puppets and it was from birth practically just everything. I wanted to know more and more and more, and so I did more and more research on it.
Yeah, well, I think your curiosity and your interest in all these things comes through in all your writing. I mean, you must just be researching all the time to have, so many books in many different areas.
Well, yeah, and I actually, it's a way of validating to my father, because my dad was so funny, when I was in college and I took all these classes and things like Old English and Old Norse. My dad's like, why, honey, repeat after me. Y'all want fries with it. I was like, Dad, seriously? He's like, no, why are you studying Chaucerian? Who in the world? Why do you need this? I'm like, because if we ever if we find a way to do DNA testing, bring Chaucer back, I can communicate with him. It'll be awesome.
That is very cool. So I want to talk about your latest book. I know you have lots of books coming out, but Stygian, which is book 28 or 29 in the Dark Hunters.
Depending on how you count them, right?
Yeah. Exactly, but it's a lot. I mean, you have several long-running series, and a lot of people listening are writing series. I'm just releasing book 10 in one series, and that feels like a lot.
No, that's wonderful.
It does. It feels like a lot. So how do you sustain your own interest over 28 plus books, and also how do you keep the stories fresh for the readers?
Well, to me, the characters are why I write. So they're family. And I love the worlds. Some of the series like League and Dark Hunter, I grew up with. So, the League characters have been with me since I was a small child, and Dark Hunter's been with me. Some of the characters actually predate Dark Hunter. Like Talon, I invented, goodness, elementary school, junior high. He was actually taken out of a high fantasy series that I used to write. So some of those characters even predate Dark Hunter, but Dark Hunter itself started when I was 18 years old. So yeah, they're my family, and I still, when I'm writing them, they just I want to know more and more about them. There's so much left in the world that I have yet really to get into that I want to explore more. Like the Hell Chasers, I did short stories about them many years ago when I was still a teenager, but in the series that's been published in book form, we really haven't delved a whole lot into it. And I still want to go and explore more and more. So yeah, and the Lords of Avalon kind of got sidetracked a little bit. So I still haven't really delved deep into those books yet as far as I want to go. So there's just so much more material still there.
Oh, and I love your enthusiasm, but I wonder on the series, because again, on book 10, I'm like, I've lost track of it. And do you have a series Bible for your characters and the plots, or do you just remember stuff or have good beta readers?
Sadly, I I don't know where I put my car keys. I lose everything else in my house, but I remember all these nuances about every character. Well, except for some of the, I won't lie, not every single character. Some of the smaller characters, I will have to go back and go, wait a minute, what color are their eyes? But the major characters are, like I said, they're family to me. So all of those I remember. I didn't have a Bible until we started doing the screenplays. And then the script writers are like, okay, we can't call you every 5 minutes. You have got to write some of this down. We can't keep this straight. How do you keep it straight? I'm like, I don't know. How do you not? But yeah, so now I have gone back and had to do like the timelines, the dictionaries. It's like, okay. Other people have to play my universe now. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. So how do you then decide which series to write next? Because again, some readers might love one particular series and, others like another series. So how are you juggling them all?
That becomes problematic because they're, the readers who read one series or another are really possessive, and they are, why are you wasting time with that when I want you over here? And then of course the other ones are like, well, why are you over there? Because I like this one. And it's like, I love all of you equally. So please don't fight. And I'm sorry, but they're all my children and I love them all equally. Basically, it's whatever character's screaming loudest in my head. And because to me, it would be a disservice. If that's not the book I'm most passionate about, that's where my attention needs to be. Because if I'm just writing a book to write it, because I'm being told that, we need the Dark Hunter book now, or we need, Lords of Avalon, or we need this, that's not the book of my heart. And if that's not the book of my heart, I don't think it's fair to give that to the readers. So I want them to have the book that is burning to get out of me. The characters that are keeping me up at night, that are storming around in my head, that are just like, and that's what gets my attention. It's like, and I have been in the middle of a book before, had to make the awkward call to my editor going, I know I told you that we were going to do this. We're not doing that book anymore. I got sidetracked.
Into something else. And I was wondering, as you're talking, because I know some writers hear voices and take dictation and others kind of, type as if they're in control. Which one are you, or how do you write?
If I try, well, as you see, I sputter around a lot. I'm also verbally dyslexic, so if I were trying to talk, I think I would break the computer. I have to type. It's the only way I can actually focus. So for me, it's the only time I'm actually really calm and I'm not like bouncing off walls is when I'm sitting in my chair and it's just me and the keyboard, or it used to be me and the typewriter.
Oh, that's amazing. So again, coming back to your readers, because you have these super fans who are minions, which I said to my husband, of course, he likes the Minions from, and I'm like, no, not Minions, Minions. And some even have these tattoos of your symbols, which is just incredible. So how do you think you have turned casual readers into such rabid fans, I guess?
It was weird. They kind of always been there. I mean, we started in the dark ages of the web. Back in the early 90s, we had oh my gosh, GeoCities. Before GeoCities, we had Prodigy. We always had these chat rooms, and I guess some of it's from the fact that I was an role player and such. Before, back when we would do SCA stuff back in the 80s and the early 90s. And, I remember when I did my very first book signing, gosh, I guess it was 93, 94. And I sold out all of my books in 45 minutes. And I was sitting next to a writer. I won't tell who it is. But she was sitting there looking over at me going, "Are you famous? Who are you? Oh, my God." Because I had a line already out the door. It was surreal and fun. But just from those communities online, and I guess short stories too helped a lot because I started publishing the short stories in 78. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. And it's so interesting to hear that you did the kind of early days of online marketing, because now we hear even new authors saying, "Oh goodness, it's so much work to do social media. It's so much work to do websites and email." So how do you manage to keep readers engaged? Because your voice is what they want. They don't want an assistant's voice. So how are you managing to kind of do that and write so much and have a life?
Well, it's harder actually now because back then there was not so much noise online, and you really, you didn't have. I had one of the first bulletin boards for writers. Nobody had ever heard of them. We had the Dark Hunter chat rooms before anybody knew what a chat room was or a blog. So I had the characters blogging. Now it's a lot harder because you got Twitter, you got Facebook, you got Reddit, you've got, and every time you turn around, there's another one coming online. It really is hard to stay focused. Some of them feed in, but it is hard. I'm not going to lie. It can drain you very quickly. But what we do is, my oldest son helps out a lot with doing social media. So it helps if you've got a millennial in your team. But, I try to do a post every day or two or three, something like just, here's my day. Here's, my squirrel running across the yard. My cat did something cute. Or something about the characters. Usually I try to stay focused on the books. But, yeah, it is hard. No doubt about it. It was much easier to stay close to the fans 20 years ago online than it is now.
Oh, that's interesting perspective. Well, what about merchandise? Because I see that you've actually got tons and tons of merchandise, and that's even without movies and other stuff like that. So why do you think you got into the merchandise, and is that effective for fan engagement?
It can be. Yeah, well, I have a lot of friends because I've been doing, the convention circuits and such, like to do fun. I grew up, I went to art school, so I have friends who have interesting hobbies and do different things like create soaps, they create nail polishes. And, having been in all the conventions all these years, it's like, hey, want to do some of that for me? And, like the Dark Hunter dolls were actually something I did way back when I used to do custom doll work for other people. And then, gosh, when did I make the first one? I guess back in the late 80s, early 90s, I started doing the Dark Hunters and just created my own. And at first, nobody knew who they were, so I'd take them around to the book signings to go, these are my characters. And it would help draw people into the book signing, being like, she came here with a bunch of dolls. What are those? And then I'd get to tell them, it'd break the ice a little bit. They'd be like, oh, it sounds so much fun. Okay, I'll take a few books. So, yeah, it actually helped me. Because for me, it was easier to talk about my dolls than it was my books.
Actually, it's a really good point, because they are unusual and it's a talking point, as you say. Do have fans ended up kind of with collectibles over time?
Right. And we auctioned, somewhere out there are a lot of people with my handmade dolls to this day, because in the beginning days, I auctioned off a lot of them. Or not auctioned, I raffled off, but that's technically illegal, so I always feel weird saying I raffled. We held drawings for them.
Yes. And in terms of like you mentioned, the convention circuit, do you still find that in-person events are really effective for you, or are you favouring the online kind of marketing now?
No, I like to be in person. To me, the online community is very sterile, and I like seeing people. This is so much more fun, and because when you're just you can't tell people's feelings get hurt because they don't know that you're, So I much prefer, to me, you build much better relationships. Yeah, it's funny with my kids because, you'll go up there and they're sitting together in their rooms and they're like, and you're like, kids, what are you doing? Turn your head, talk to your buddy. He came over here. Why are you texting each other sitting in the same room? There's this thing called a relationship. It won't hurt you, I promise.
I laugh at that because I often text my husband from the bedroom to the living room. We're two introverts living in the same flat.
And I admit I'm guilty. I'll text my kids, come down here. Well, that's laziness.
Yeah.
But,
Good point.
I'm in the basement. Come here, kid.
That's cool. So I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned horror earlier and that you came out of, you were reading horror and involved in that. And I'm so fascinated about genre in the publishing industry because it kind of, and I guess paranormal romance as well, like urban fantasy is kind of related to horror. It's very difficult to say, but with paranormal romance too, do you feel that the perspective on genre fiction has changed? I mean, to me it feels like it used to be on the fringes and now it's mainstream.
Well, I predate, when I was first writing, they had no genres as we know them. So it's been funny to watch how the trends have gone, through the years, because Dark Hunter first started out in horror. Then, and some of the early rejections were hysterical because, one of my favorites came from Marion Zimmer Bradley, who, just because you've got magic in this, it doesn't make it fantasy. You really need to put this in horror. And then I'd send it over to horror and they're like, look, just because you get demons in this, it does not make this horror. You need to send this over to fantasy. And then they're like, well, I don't know, you got romance in it. Go try romance. And then the romance people would be like, well, just because you got a relationship in here, it doesn't make it romance. You need to send this to science fiction and fantasy. It's like, oh, God, somebody make up your mind. Where does this go? So, yeah, what I've learned, I think Stephen King says it best. I don't care what you call me as long as you don't call me late to dinner. And, yeah, because they're constantly inventing new labels for what we write. A new adult now for a young adult, but it's not. It's new adult, but it's still young adult.
I thought new adult had more sex in.
But so does young adult. I mean, have you read some of the young adults that out there? Really?
It is a good point. It's so interesting, and interesting you say that's kind of changed over the years. And I wondered also, because many people listening want to be a writer for the long term, and we focus on our craft, but there's a lot more that goes into it than craft, right? So what are some of your tips for lasting a really long time in publishing and writing?
Never give up, never surrender. Thank you, Galaxy Quest. Basically, it is. It's don't get hung up on things like labels. They're going to call you whatever they call you. Be happy. Focus on one reader at a time. All careers are built one reader at a time, one book at a time. You got to roll with the punches because God knows life's never going to be easy for anybody. But it is what it is. You take each day one step at a time. You hang on to the people around you who are positive. If you realize that somebody around you isn't, don't be afraid to call the hurt. And I hate, if somebody's having a bad patch in their life, don't abandon them. True friends, everybody has troubles. You want to support them. But if you realize that this is a friend who is chronically toxic, and when you're around them, you're getting a stomach ache, and you really dread, and this is what I tell my kids all the time too, if it's somebody you dread being around, that's somebody you might want to think about not being around, especially with writers, because we all have that person in our writing group where you go, oh my God, I just finaled in a contest. And this person goes, well, they didn't have that many entries to share.
Yeah.
You know exactly who I'm talking about. We all got that person in our group.
Yeah.
That's the person that I'm talking about. Don't let them rain on you because we've got that voice in our head. We don't need that too. And those are the kind of people where think about it, so yeah, stay positive because happiness is really life short. And, you want to keep it positive as much as you can. Don't let anything rain on you. Believe that you deserve your dream, that you're going to have this long-term career. You won't. And everything that you do, we're writers. Close your eyes and imagine, I'm J.K. Rowling. Whether you are or not, you could be. You don't know. But writers. You're gonna be. And if not, live in your head and you are, because that's the beauty of what we do.
No, that's fantastic. Super positive. And I know people listening going, but it's difficult in this negative environment, news environment. And I'm like, yeah, turn off the news.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. I watch about half an hour a day so that I'm not completely in my bubble. But yeah, no, it is. It's like, yeah, no. Don't let anything during that muse. Treat her kindly. Hopefully she'll be kind back. Some days mine can be a little bitchy, but by and large, she's good to me. And I try to be good to her. So yeah.
Yeah, and then I know we're almost out of time, but your first novel debuted, I think, in the 90s, or was it in the 80s?
In the early 90s.
In the early 90s. And of course, publishing was completely different back then in terms of the market. And many of my listeners are independent authors. Some are trying to decide what to do. So I wondered, what are your thoughts on the changes in publishing and how you've seen it go up and down over time?
My thought is, the whole thing's to find your audience. And, however you do it, you do it. I know, because I was there in the beginning of ebooks, and I was actually the first New York author to sign an ebook contract. And, and I never understood that whole backlash that ebook authors had anyway, because it's like, we're all writers. If you write something, whether you're published or not, you're a writer. So why do you feel this need to I'm published and you're not? And it's like, no. It's easy to write a book when you know you're going to get paid. That's the easy part of our job. The hardest thing in the world is to find that drive to keep writing when you don't know. Be kind to them, because we need them. We're not all going to live forever. We need to cultivate those young writers and to keep them going, because to me, the biggest tragedy in the world is when a writer quits writing. You don't want that. Those people don't need to die. Those characters need to live and breathe just like everybody else. So, we need as a community to stick together and to just grow stronger. And, a rising tide will raise all boats and float all boats. Sorry. But so I don't understand the whole negativity thing. Anyway, it's like, stick to your guns, whatever you do. Don't let anything destroy your dream. You have to believe that as a writer. You have to believe that all throughout your career if you want to stay in here. Because people are going to come at you, whether it's in writing or any career you choose, you're going to have those enemies. But you know what? Laugh, step over them, and keep going. Because at the end of the day, they're the barking dogs that are going to get left behind. You're going to be that steamroller that just goes, whatever, and keep going. And that's how you maintain a long career in any profession.
That's fantastic. Fantastic advice. So before we go, just tell people, if they haven't tried your books before and Stygian is out now, what can they find in that book? What will they love about it?
Hopefully it's humor. The thing that I like about it is it delves into the dark side. Most of the books focus on the heroes, but he actually comes from the villain side. And so you get the first really good in-depth look at what it was like for the vampire side. They're not true vampires. They only live to be 27. Then they have to decide whether or not they want to kill humanity to live. And you get to actually see what it was like, because they started out as a normal race like us and they got cursed. And what it was like to be that very first generation who had that taken from them, through no fault of their own. And they now have to live with the consequences of, do I have it in me? Can I become a predator? And Urine is an interesting, because he watches his family and his friends, and all of them have to go through these really harsh decisions. And he lives for 11,000 years. And just watching him gain and lose his humanity is, I think, very interesting.
Wow, it sounds fascinating. So where can people find you and everything you do online?
SherrilynKenyon.com, and I'm usually on Facebook, at least. I try to hit there every day. I don't always, but I'm there a few times a week.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for your time, Sherrilyn. That was great.
Thank you, sweetie. I appreciate it.